Okay. Welcome to Wednesday night Bible study tonight. And we'll go ahead and start taking prayer requests. Let me turn this on. All right, Ackham's preaching in a new church in Crossville tonight. So you pray for him. It's a church that doesn't know our ministry, and it's a good opportunity for him. Then Sunday he's in North Carolina, and then he's going home. So thank you for loving on him. We were able to take good care of him Sunday, so pray for that. Any prayer requests this evening?
I lost a kid a few years ago, and the other one's not doing too good.
Okay. So Obi was telling me, what years were you in Vietnam, Obi? What years were you in Vietnam?
68.
You were in Vietnam the year before I was born. Yeah, I wasn't even born yet, Opie. Isn't that crazy? Your pastor wasn't even born when you were going to Vietnam.
That makes me feel old.
Well, you don't, he told me he's 83. He don't look 83. But being in Vietnam, he was exposed to Agent Orange, which for me, I just hear about it. I don't know what that, I mean, I know what it was, but don't know what the damage it did to so many men.
Basically, I've had cancer 3 times so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad God has helped fix that 3 times. So he's just down to 1 kidney. And so let's pray for Obi. Okay. Anybody else tonight? Okay. Okay. What's your mom's name, Sarah? Maryland? How old's your mom? Who? She's been here a couple times. She don't look 93. And she knows the Lord, right? Amen. All right. Anybody else tonight? Over here?
Pray for you to come and get that pig.
Sarah got him a pig for Father's Day a few years ago, and now he wants me to get it. The first time he tried giving it to me, Sarah vetoed him because I'm going to eat it. But now she don't care. So, it might show up in the next potluck. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We got good to have Kathleen back. Does anybody know where Kathleen was for 2 months?
No.
She took a cruise ship from here across the Atlantic. Yeah, went to Greece and it was a bargain deal. She said at the end of the year, they like to get the cruise ships back across, and if you take that cruise, you can do it at a bargain. I said, there's a reason why. Yeah. 7 days to cross the Atlantic. So glad to have Kathleen back with us. Anybody else over here tonight? What's her last name? Hewitt. And she's in Florida? And she's got leukemia, right? Okay. That's the one I was trying to remember. Okay. Emma and Judy. Anybody else? All right. What about this side over here? Any prayer requests? Pray for Gabe and Melissa. Of course, I'm going. Let's see. Chris Swenson and his son's going. Ted's going, and Colby's going. They're going to be leaving not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And one of the things Gabe and Melissa is going to do, and why we picked Alaska, is it's in St. Mary's, Alaska. So when you look at a map, you see Bethel, which is by the Bering Sea. And then beyond Bethel is this little village called St. Mary's, has 600 people in it. But all around there, there's many villages. And because the government went in and gave them, gave them a check because of, what they did with the Eskimos and stuff up in that area. Most of them get a government check. Well, there's nothing to do. Alcohol's through the roof. He was telling me a bottle of bootlegged Jack Daniels is $400 a bottle. And I told Gabe, no, we cannot sell it. I'm just kidding. So there's a big need there. And what I'm excited about is Gabe and Melissa being able to go and give their testimonies. They've never had anybody do that. And if you looked at the news at all, the suicide rate in those villages are through the roof. You got darkness half the year. There's nothing to do. All the animals and all of that used to keep them, all of that's been changed. And it's a very overlooked, it's the United States of America. But it's just like everywhere else. You can't get people to go there because nobody wants to go there. He told me milk is $17 a gallon today, right? $17 a gallon. All her groceries, she has to put a grocery order in, and it has to get flown in on an airplane. So, I mean, you're not just going to do that on a whim. And he's one missionary in one village, and there are villages all over that place with no church. So it's an opportunity. Now, I've been north of that above the Arctic Circle, but I've never been that far west. It's right where the mountains end, and it's just frozen tundra. So you pray that God would use their testimony, and we'll be able to see some people respond to hope. And they're going to go out before me. I'm going to leave the Monday after that. They're going to fly out there ahead of time. So just pray for that.
Do they speak English there?
They do in the village there, and this is something I did not know. The tribe up there speaks the same language as the Navajo. So next year, they're going on a 15-village, 2-week caravan in boats for 2 weeks. And there some Navajo Indians that got saved at an Indian reservation here is going to go up there and help them evangelize that area. Everybody would up there would speak. They would speak English, but their tribe. This is 100% true. Even Acom. Acom did a great job preaching, but that's not his English is not his mother tongue. And yes, they can listen to it in English, but if you want to hear it in their native language, it's a big deal. So they would still. I think there is a Navajo Bible. I do believe there is a Navajo Bible, but there's not that many people that speak Navajo anymore. Big need, and it's part of the United States, right? And I'll mention this too. We've been praying for Pastor Rue because the pastor he works with died. So our missionary brother Rue, we've been praying for God to send him a pastor. A guy from Illinois went up there, candidated, turned it down, said no. Well, so here's what I asked him. It's a building that's paid for. They run 40 people. They have 16 missionaries. They can't get a pastor. One of my guys who I trained in Slippery Rock had been telling me he was at a bigger church in North Carolina, and he was looking at a church in Pennsylvania the last I knew. Well, he just called me the other day and told him God laid it on his heart to start a church in Idaho. And I thought, where he was looking is 8 hours. Brother Ruse said from his church, the next Baptist church is an 8-hour drive. And there's town after town after town after town after town, no church. So if you're wanting to go to a Baptist church, once you leave his church and head north, you got an 8-hour drive before you get to one. Right? Just, and again, somebody willing to go take a church with 40 people in it, in the middle of Idaho, is going to have to be a God thing. And nobody wants to do it. You know, but I don't think it's a coincidence that I just happen to know a young man, and this young man's church has already pledged to be half of his support, so he's halfway there. You know, I think that whoever takes Pastor Rue's church still has to have some mission support, and that's part of the problem. And nobody wants to mess with that, right? Where you have to go on the road and go church to church to church. So pray for that, because who knows? You know, I mean, that it's funny that I know both of them. So I put them two together, and we'll let God take care of that. All right. Anybody else tonight? Okay. Cowboy Camp is coming up, and that'll be right around the corner. And looking forward to that. One of the things that I ask God every year, if you help me pray with that, there are so many vacation Bible schools. I ask God to let us reach the family and the kids that don't have a home church. You know, and so many, every year we see so many. If you're a part of that, help me. I always ask them, hey, where do you go to church? And you wouldn't believe how many of them don't go to church. You know, and I'd love to have them for a week, but the goal is, see if we can reach their families, right? So just pray for that week, that God would just give us an open door there, that we can love on them and show them. But a lot of them have reasons why they don't go to church. A lot of them think that if they come, I mean, we hear it from Paul all the time, and I know Gabe mentioned that people that would have passed, you know, if their name's, you know, been on the, I don't know what they call it, mobile patrol or whatever, they feel like maybe they wouldn't be wanted in a church, right? Or they don't look like what you would expect whatever a church person's supposed to look like, you know. So just pray that that God would let us reach those people during Cowboy Camp. All right, anybody else? Yes, sir. Okay. So she came on Sunday, and she can't find her wallet from Sunday. We looked around here, and and it might be we missed it, so if you happen to see it, let me know. Just pray Rochelle finds her wallet. All right, anybody else tonight? Yes, sir.
A friend of mine, Bill Stevens,
Okay.
get court today. I haven't heard anything about it, but he's been in there for a month and a half, lost his house.
What does he do? Was he in?
He's got sort of got a lot of care.
And he had court today? Is he a short, like a stocky guy? Yeah, super nice guy. He hugged my neck on Sunday. He told me he had court today.
Yeah, he called me
Did he get out?
Monday or Tuesday. I don't know. He called me Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember what day it was. He said he had court on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And,
When you're in court, like when you go to jail, you're not thinking about, hey, I want to change my life. You're just dealing with the mess you're in. And some of them at home have stuff at home that if they go home to and it's in the house, it'll be a really bad temptation. So he
typically asked me to go with him and flood that because he couldn't go to the house.
well, so he asked me the same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
He typically asked me that.
Yeah.
So I told him, somebody will go with you.
Yeah.
We'll take a whole group. Ain't nobody's going to let you do that.
Right. Yeah. And that's something that you don't think about. If you've got drugs at home, and as soon as you get out of jail, you got to go in your house, you know they're in there. I mean, somebody ought to be able to willing to go. And I'm not even sure what to do. I guess you flush it, you know. But there's things that a lot you don't think about. How difficult it is to begin to rebuild your life when you've got stuff like that you got to. So we'll pray for him. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Father, thank you for tonight, and just because it's fresh in our mind, this man that we mentioned that it, had court today. Don't know if he got out again, but he promised if he did, he'd give me a call. And I just pray that you would remind him of that and that you would help him. And Lord, I know on Sunday night when we got to see him, he had tears in his eyes and just wanted so bad a chance to do right. And Lord, you know his heart and whether or not he's ready. And just ask and pray you would be kind to him, and that there would be people willing to help him if he's able to get out. Lord, I think about Brother Rue. He's 73 years old, been serving God for a long time. Came back from Australia after years in Australia and just had a burden for his own country. And him and his wife are faithful in a place that's just as remote as Australia is. And Lord, just being a help to a pastor out there. And then that pastor died. And they've been praying faithfully for another pastor. And Lord, we know that you know that. We also know that laborers are few. And my friend feels like you're leading him to Idaho. And I don't know if that will work out or if that's something you're doing or not. But just pray that your will would be done there as those two get to know each other, and maybe that your hand would be in that. And just pray that you would continue to sustain Brother Rue while he's there. And Lord, I just pray for this mission trip to Alaska. I pray that you would be with Gabe and Melissa as they give their testimony, and that the people there would see in front of them life and hope in what Jesus can do. And Lord, in a place that's so beautiful yet filled with a lack of hope, may the glorious gospel just shine out there. That you would use us to be an encouragement to that missionary. There's a lot of things he needs help with. He doesn't get a lot of help up there for cutting wood from the winter to getting camp set up. Pray for safety with the small planes that go and land in those areas, the boats and the bears and all of that. Just ask that you would give safety as they travel out before me, and that they would arrive safely and be able to get some work done. And Lord, I pray for Cowboy Camp. And Lord, the whole purpose of having this in the summer is to reach people. And Lord, I pray as these kids come, we don't know what kind of homes they come from, but I pray that when they're here, they'll know they're loved, and they'll know why they're loved. That all the effort that goes through that is because of the effort that Jesus went through on the cross. They would see it in our faces and in our hearts as we interact with them. And then, Lord, I pray that if those families do not have a home, a place that they go to church, they would feel like they could come visit here, and that you would work in their heart. For Emma and Judy, both friends of Sherry who have cancer, ask that you would help these ladies, the ones getting ready to have a transplant, and just pray that that would go good and be effective, and that you would work there. Lord, thank you for Obi and his faithfulness over the years. He doesn't miss unless he's sick. And Lord, he just said that he's struggling, and he's down to one kidney with the effects from being in the military there in Vietnam. And I just pray that you would put your hand on him, and that you would help him, oh Lord, to continue to be faithful. He doesn't want to miss. He enjoys being here, and pray that you'd continue to give him his health, and Lord, that you would reach out and let that one kidney there be strong and be able to pick up the slack for the other one. And I just pray that you'd protect that you'd put your hands around that kidney and just help it to keep doing what it needs to do. Lord, pray for Rochelle to be able to find her wallet. I know many times, Lord, I've been there and thought, you know where it's at. I mean, you know where we know how many hair I have, you know, when a sparrow falls, you know where that wallet is. And Lord, you know that because we're not you, we fret over things and worry, and hard to even get any peace when you know that something's lost and you're not able to find it. So I pray, and we promise, Father, to give you the glory. I pray you'd help her find that wallet tonight, and that she could go home with peace in her heart. And I know you can do that. How I know that you could move it if you wanted to and put it right in her lap. And Lord, we know that that is possible with you, and trust that, and just ask that you would bring her peace with that. And pray for Gary's family. And Lord, thank you for his faithfulness to church, his faithfulness to pray for his family. We all have family that we pray for, and ask God that you would first help us be what we need to be, so that we can be ambassadors for you here. Sometimes we're not always the best at that, but I pray you'd help us. And then I pray you'd help us where we can't help, that you'd reach our families' hearts when we're not with them, their minds when we can't speak to them. And Lord, that more important, I pray that conviction in the heart would be there all the time to remind them of what they know and how much you love them. And Lord, tonight as we continue to look at your word, I pray you'd help us. We love you. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. If you would look, if you would, and let's go to John chapter 14. John chapter 14. Let me get there. John chapter 14. We're going to read this here for a little bit, and I've got to add some verses to it. Luke chapter 14. I don't know if I said John. I'm sorry. It's Luke chapter 14. And I might have said John, and it's my fault. Luke chapter 14, and we'll begin reading in verse 1. Luke chapter 14. And it came to pass as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. They were always judging him. And it's crazy that the religious group of the people were so judgmental of the Lord. Don't make a whole lot of sense. And behold, they were watching. What's he going to do on the Sabbath? Is he going to break the Sabbath? Verse 2, and behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And Jesus answering spake unto the lawyers and the Pharisees, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? Now, he knows he's getting ready to step in. He knows what he's going to do. And he knows this is a sore thing. He says he's bringing the subject matter up. Because the problem is they were having a hard time understanding if that is truly God in front of them, then anything he says is correct. Can God lie? Can God mislead? So once you identify Jesus as God, then he has a blank check. Whatever he wants to do on the Sabbath day, you're not going to question him. He's God. The problem is identifying him as God. Now, I'll tell you this. We may identify Jesus as God. We may 100% agree with that. But do we treat him that way? You might identify him that way. Do you treat him that way? Well, you'd never tell him no. There wouldn't be anything too big you wouldn't do for him. We might acknowledge he is God, but do we treat him as he's God? Right? So he's getting ready to ask him this question. And Jesus spake unto the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their peace, and he took him and healed him and let him go. And answered him, saying, which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? Now, I will tell you this. So he's telling them, he knows this bothered them. He knows that they're going to say, and remember, one of the things that they used against him when they crucified him is they did not use Roman law. They did not use a law that he broke in the Roman society. They used biblical law. They called him a blasphemer. They called him that he broke the Sabbath day. What happens if you break the Sabbath? And you were taken out in stone. They did not use a heathen law system in which to label Jesus as guilty. They used the Bible, okay? And the reason why they were able to do that is because they did not recognize Jesus as being the Son of God, right? So on this verse here, unfortunately, a lot of people will use this verse, and they'll say, I wasn't in church because I had an ox in the ditch, right? The problem is if you're putting the ox in the ditch, I don't know if that counts, right? What he wasn't making if the Sabbath or church is important, for instance, if you came to me right now and said, I found a loophole in the Bible, or if you came to me and said, man, I had a vision and Jesus told me that, or even if Jesus were to say, Dave, you can drink alcohol. And if I would say, do I have the same body I have now? Yes. Am I still going to be a sinner in this? I'm going to say, I'm not touching it. Because I'm not looking for a loophole to figure out how to drink. I've determined a long time ago, I don't want to drink. So when I look at the Bible, I'm not trying to find a way out. I don't want a way out. I don't want to drink. I'm happy with not drinking. I'm convinced that it's not a good thing. Okay? So even if you found a way out, I wouldn't take it. I'm okay. Same way when it comes to church. You should want to be here. You should want to be part of the Sabbath. In the Old Testament, you should want to go do it. It should be a disappointment if you can't. Man, I'm sorry. My ox is in the ditch. I hate it. Let me get this thing out of here, and if I can make it before I get back. He's not saying this to give us a universal out. You know, and there are times, maybe something's scheduled and you can't change it. Maybe it lands on a certain day and that's the only day you can do it. God gives us grace to do that. I mean, if possible and you're in that situation, there's always, maybe you can get back and you can make it for an evening service. Maybe you can even try going where you're at. Trying to say, hey, I'll pop in and visit a church. It's not really the missing, is it a struggle to miss? If it's become something that's no longer a matter of your conscience looking inside and going, man, I really hate this. I wish this was scheduled on another day, or I wish this had another opportunity, then God knows all of those motives. And if it's a family thing, and it's not 52 weeks out of the year, I believe that's got a lot of grace and a lot of room for that. But when he's saying this, a lot of people use that as an out to say, well, things come up, and the Bible says if you got an ox in the ditch, you can go get it out. And that is true. What he was telling them is that this man, if you're going to let me go get an ox out of a ditch, and that's even something the law allowed us to do, which it did, the law gave room for that, well, then certainly this man, me healing him on the Sabbath day is going to be okay. It's really not put in there as an avenue. And again, listen, there really isn't anything in the Bible that says we have to have church on Sunday. I mean, you could move it to Monday. There's no mandate that says you've got to do it on Sunday. So that's not really the issue. The issue is where your heart is. And if you do miss, and people are going to miss, and there are legitimate reasons to do so, but it has to do with, inside why, right? So when you read this, that was just something that a lot of people over the years come up with, and that would be the best explanation on that. And they could not answer him again to these things. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden, when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying unto them, so another thing the Pharisees did, they would walk in there and they're all looking for recognition, right? When thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. So he's saying, when you go into any place, don't sit down in the highest room, all right? In verse 9, he said, and he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, give this man place, and thou being with shame to take the lower room. But when thou art bidden, go sit down in the lowest room, and when he that bade thee come he may say unto thee, Friend, go up hither, then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. So he's just giving, the Pharisees were all caught up with themselves. He's saying, look, don't go and sit up front, because maybe the chief man will come and say, hey, that seat's not for you, your seat's in the back. He said, what you ought to do is you ought to go sit in the back and let the chief man come and say, hey, come sit up in here with me. He's just teaching them humility. I think that goes a really long way in church is humility. Once you recognize your place, and what's our place? We all say this, you give your testimony, I'm glad I'm a sinner saved by grace. I'm going to sit in the back because that's who I am. Just a sinner saved by grace. And I'm thankful that God called me forward one day. Don't deserve it. Just being kind to me. And I think in our attitude, when we approach our relationship with the Lord, is humbleness has got to be there. Every little thing that he does for you should be a shouting moment, even if it's little, because it's more than we deserve. Even if it's something little, like finding a wallet, right? I mean, why? Because I'm humbled that he talks to me. I'm humbled that he even wants anything to do with me. Man, I'm humbled that he lets me serve, right? And that's what he was telling the Pharisees, that then he goes on, and this is really, now we're getting really into the meat of why I picked this chapter, but I just wanted to go through the whole chapter to stay in line with what we do on Wednesdays. Down to verse 11. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Then said he also to him that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and recompense be made thee. But when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the lame, and the blind, and thou shalt be blessed. For they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. Now remember, we started this off talking about in the New Testament it says we are salt and light. In the Old Testament talked about you're being a watchman. We talked about workmen. We talked about that that there's something for us to do, that there's a purpose. And in this story, he says this. He said, listen, if you're going to have a dinner, a big dinner at your house, don't call your friends, and then don't call the who's who in the county. Don't go after the mayor, all the people that own the businesses, because when you bring them, they might say, oh, okay, well, then you come to my house. And they can reward you for inviting them. He said, don't do that. He said, when you have a feast, go to the lame, the poor, the blind, the halt, bid them to come to your house. Now, I didn't say it. It's not my parable. This is Jesus saying this. He's saying if you're always hanging around those kinds of people, well, they can always do something for you, and that'll be your reward. It's what they can do back for you. He said, but when you open your home to the halt, the blind, and the maimed, when you do that, here's what he said. Listen to this. And thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee. How are you going to be rewarded? Thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. That's when your reward will be. They can't reward you. You will be rewarded by the Lord when you see him. Now, which would you rather have? Now, he is looking at this with the gospel. Okay? So, let's say I don't even know who that is, all right? So you can let's just figure somebody that makes, we know there's somebody that makes $1 million a year, $2 million a year, and they decide we're going to go church looking in this county. And they come in with a really sharp family, really nice car outside, and he owns 4. Man, people be tripping over each other trying to say, hey, man, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for visiting. And you'll be like, man, I'll tell you, This didn't work out too good, but this is the honest truth, because I was there when it happened. A guy that I was an assistant pastor for, I think he's got Alzheimer's, so I'm safe with telling this story because he won't remember it. He actually, there was a guy visiting one day, and he was a doctor, and he said, and I was the assistant pastor back. He made me sit up there. I hated it. I hated sitting on a platform. Couldn't wait to get off that thing, because everybody's looking at you while he's preaching. And he said, we're thankful for this family. He's a doctor, and he's looking for a church. And he said, well, I hope he picks our church. We could use the money. Dead serious. I was like, well, that's probably not going to happen. And it didn't, right? And now, I promise you, I didn't make that up. Ask my wife. That was real time from the pulpit. I was like, oh, my word. That probably wasn't, maybe he thought it was funny at the moment. Well, that's kind of what they're talking about right there, right? It's like you would, yes. But he's saying that what he's come to do, and the reason why those people, not that rich people cannot get saved, because they can. The other group knows they're down. And there's no way out. He has to get the rich man there first. So he's talking about the gospel. You're going to see it here in the rest of that. But then I want you to notice something. Ministry is going to be remembered at the resurrection of the just. He's going to know what you did. And it's going to be recompensed. The word recompense means rewarded. He said, look, don't invite your rich friends over because they can reward you now. He said, you go out there and invite them, let me reward you. Right? Who do you want to be rewarded by? The Lord, because that's eternal. Not here, because it wears off. So he's talking about, the gospel and who the church is to reach. What the church is. The church has a mission, and that is to reach people. Now, obviously, you're not going to hold the gospel back from anybody. But what he's saying is that this is what it looks like from my perspective. And he goes on and he continues this story. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, blessed is he that shall eat the bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, a certain man had a great supper. Now that certain man, that's the Lord. And what's the supper? What supper are we looking forward to do? The marriage supper of the Lamb. Where Jesus said to his disciples, I won't eat of this till I eat it with you in heaven. At that marriage supper of the Lamb, we're the bride. He's the bridegroom. He's going to serve us at that meal. That's what he's talking about. The only people who can be present at that meal are, and we won't get into all of that, some, with the Baptist briders and all of that, we'll do that another night, but for sure, you got to be saved, right? Okay, so to be a part of this, all right, so then said he unto them, a certain man had a great supper, that would be God, and bade many. How many? Many. Not one, not two, many. Okay, bed them, invited them. Aren't you glad that he invites you to this supper? When you got saved, he invited you into his home. He invited you to live with him. He extended that salvation to you and invited you to come. Now that word invited has a connotation, you don't have to accept it. If I invite you to a wedding, do you have to come? You'll see this because he invited some and they didn't come. So the invitation, inviting doesn't mean that now you're in. The inviting is the opportunity to come, to accept that invitation. Which is why, it says, whosoever will. When he invites you, there are people that he's invited to heaven that have said no. Because follow this story. And they sent his servants, so God sent his servants at supper time. That means there's a timeline. There's an expiration on this event. The invitation won't always be open. There will be a supper time. Once there's a supper time, you can't invite anybody else. Nobody else can come in. He has a timeline. He had a timeline for Noah. He allowed him to preach over 100 years. He had a timeline. He had a timeline for Israel and Egypt, 300 years. He had a timeline. He had a timeline to the birth of Jesus Christ. He had a timeline. He had a timeline for the death of Jesus on the cross before the foundation of the earth. He had a timeline. And there is a timeline for the rapture of the church. It won't always be opened. All of those other doors are already shut because there was a timeline. The day came and went. One day, that day. And then that is why he says to the church, hey, don't say there's 6 months unto harvest. He actually told us, don't say there's 6 months unto harvest. It's the reason why you can't say that. The harvest is already white. That means we need to be out there in that field because it's white. He said, don't say it's 6 months. You'll have 6 months. If it's white, then there's fruit out there that needs to be harvested. What does he need to harvest it with? Workers. What was that story about? Workers. Right? He said, pray for laborers to go into that harvest. Okay? So he said, and send his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, come, for all things are now ready. Again, timeline. And they all with one consent began to make excuses. They were invited. Why did they not come to this wedding? Because they weren't invited? They were invited. And here's why they didn't come. And they with all one consent began to make what? Excuses. Right? You know that old song, Arnold, you know, excuses, excuses. They make them every day. The devil will provide. If church, you stay away. You ever heard that old song? I would sing it, but it would be very bad. And they with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground. I must need go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. He was invited. Why didn't he go? Couldn't be bothered. So he handed back the invitation. I mean, think about it this way. The servants, God said, go tell them the supper's ready. Sent his servants, gave an invitation. Here you go. You're invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he looked at it, looked at the date and said, oh, thank you. That's kind. But I have things to do. And he handed back the invitation. Well, that's what the point he's making with this parable. Okay? Let's see, they said, have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen. I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. And another said, I cannot come. So the servant came then and showed his Lord these things. So the servant went back with all of these invitations. And he's like, why are you bringing these back? I told you to hand them out. Okay? So he goes on and says, and the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded. Oh, wait. So I'm verse 21. So the servant came and showed his Lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry. Angry at who? Do you know that it is a sad thing for any soul to sit under the conviction of the gospel and turn it down? After what it cost for him to get you that invitation, you don't think there's an offense to that? Being double rejected. And not only did you get yourself in this mess, he's offering to get you out of it. And you say no. I got other things. Well, he got angry. He didn't get angry at the servants. So who's he angry at? Angry at the people he invited that don't want nothing to do with him. Where will those people end up? Now you're not in the grace of God. You're going to be in the wrath of God. Right? He's going to say, hey, did not I? And he mentions this in the Bible. He's going to say, listen, you're going to remember this day. So he goes on to say, so that servant came and showed his Lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly. Again, there's a time thing. Quickly. All right? We don't have time. We don't have time to get it right. We got to get it right now. And to go out quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. Now, there is a connotation. The first group represents Israel. The second group represents the Gentiles. Jews didn't want nothing to do with Jesus. And Jesus said, go into all the world. Hand out invitations. What are we supposed to be inviting them to? The marriage supper of the Lamb. How do you get, if you want to call it a ticket, got to have the blood of Christ in your heart. You got to accept the invitation. So what does he want us to do? He wants us to go to the halt. And when you go to these different, and not even, we would be in this category, by the way. A Gentile was unclean. The Jews did not associate with him. That'd be me. I'm not Jewish. As far as I know, I don't have any Jewish blood in me. Right? But I'm glad. Think about your kids and your grandkids. Are you not glad that God extended you an invitation here? Trust me, everybody in this room can trace their lineage back to this time when he's talking about. And he said, find the halt, the lame, the blind, the people that nobody wants. The people, Achem would always say this. Even when I first met him, he would always say these things. He would say, thank you. Although we have nothing to give you, may the God of heaven reward you when you get home. Because they know they don't have anything to give us. You're living in a mud hut. They don't have any money. They can't do anything. All they can do is say, may God reward you. Because they're thankful that Now, when you look at Achem and would you see where he came from, a little boy with no shoes, no clothes, where he used to tell me, there's a plant called cassava. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a sweet potato. The leaves are carcinogenic. He used to eat them. And he said it would make his stomach numb and he wouldn't feel the hunger pains because he would go 3 days without food, right? Now the man you saw up there, that's not that same man. Big booming voice, had a great message. That's God. God did that, right? Achem knows that. That's why he doesn't want to live here. He wants to go tell his people. And there's hut after hut after hut after hut, and they have nothing to give. Nothing. Not anything to turn to you, right? So he said, go out there and tell them. All right, so he goes on in this story. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. Why is there room? Well, because he made that, it appears that he made that table as big as it needs to get. Right? There is room. That means, why is there room? That means people that he's invited didn't take the invitation. So it's not filling up the way he thought it would fill up. There's room. Oh, and this is a, remember what a parable is? An earthly story with a heavenly meaning. There is a meaning to this parable. So there's room, and he said, hey, we did what you told us to do. And there's still room. And the Lord said unto his servants, and the Lord said unto his servants in verse 23, go out into the highways and the hedges and compel them. Now that word compel also has to do with an urgency. Okay, kind of like Lot banging on his kid's door. You know, they said, hey, do you have any people, any family in here? And he said, yeah, I have a family in here. Go tell them they got to get out of here. We're burning the city down. Do you think he just walked up, knocked on the door, opened the door and said, hey, what are you doing today? And gave the grandkids a hug and said, how'd work go? And he banged that door like the end was today. There was an urgency. He went to their door with an urgency because he knew the time was short and God was getting ready to burn that city. There's an urgency. He said compel. And that also means to go out there and to present the gospel. Like when you do witness to somebody, there ought to be some urgency about that. One of the easiest things to do when you're talking to somebody about the Lord, just let them know, if it's somebody you know, why you're doing it in the first place, because you believe this. So of course you're going to be concerned if you're a good friend, because you believe it. Right? How can they get mad at you for that? So they go on and said, and the Lord said unto his servants, go into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. What does God want? He wants his house to be full. What is full? I don't know. God can build whatever he wants to build. But he wants his house full. Now think about that. Who is he using on the other end of this? Do you believe the Bible's true? Who's the servants today? Who are they? You, me. Has the mission changed? What does he want? He wants his house to be filled. He wants us to do the inviting. Okay? We're the servants. He wants us to invite them. Okay? One of the easy ways to do that is, can somebody get saved outside here? Yes, 100%. You can lead them to the Lord at a gas station, restaurant, wherever. But when they have 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, on a Sunday, and you say, well, maybe I want to try to get them where the gospel is going to be preached, where they can hear about Jesus. Would you come to church with me? Now you have a motive. What's the motive? You want them to hear, right? Many times on Sunday, I was always told by old timers, Sunday night, Wednesday night teaching, and where you can go, where you're talking to more family. A lot of times Sunday was a lot of gospel. Do you know why? People were bringing people. I mean, if you bring somebody on Sunday morning, I don't know if you want me to preach on tithing that Sunday. You've been working on trying to get somebody to come to church with you. So that's how come, without a doubt, I always try to put the gospel in there for that reason. Because that might be the day you invite somebody, right, to hear. But we're the servant, okay? And what are we supposed to do? We're the ones doing the inviting. What's the goal? He wants his house filled. That's the goal. And who's supposed to be doing? We come together as a group to work as a group to accomplish that. What's the goal? To invite. His blood is so precious, it cost him so much, that he wants his room filled. There will be people that reject that invitation, that come up with an excuse of why they don't want to do that. What does he say? It doesn't say don't get discouraged, go to the next person, and go to the next person. And then he says, look, go to the poor and the lame. You know why? Because they're already down. The highways and hedges, now you're traveling. And a church's job is to not only reach here, but to send people out. and come back and send them out and be able to say, okay, for us, we want you to go for us. What does a missionary do? Or, man, I would love it if we got to the point one day, wouldn't it be great if one day Helenwood Baptist Church could fully support its own missionary out of Helenwood Baptist Church, where they didn't need to go to other churches. They could just be supported out of Helenwood Baptist Church. And their whole reason for being is go find some place on this planet where they don't know. Start inviting. Right? On whose behalf? Our behalf. What are we going to do? Send them. Why? Because he said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go back and I want you to invite them. You know, and if this group over here says no, go to another group. If that group says no, go to another group. And how long do you go? Till the time is up. I don't know when the time's up. I do know there's an urgency in this story. Okay? All right. So, and just like that, man, it's 8 o'clock. Let me see if I can finish just a little bit more here. And there went out great multitudes with him, and he turned and said to them, if any man come to me. So, verse 25, a lot of people were following him. And verse 26, he said this, if any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life, he cannot be my disciple. We'll end there and let me ask you a question. So this big multitude, we already know this story. We already know people made excuses. So this big multitude is following him. And he stops and he has a conversation with the people behind him. He says to all of these would-be participants in the church and says, okay, you want to join me? Well, let me tell you what that looks like. It says, if you do not hate your mother, your father, your brother, or your sister, you cannot be my disciple. Now, you've probably heard me explain that. Let's turn the table. How would you? So if I come to you and said, explain that verse to me. What does that mean? What would you tell me?
That your love for God is so great that it looks like
Well, that would be what you would expect me to say, right? Because I'm the preacher. But really, that's a question. Put him first. All of those are great. But that's a question you got to ask yourself. What does he mean? Because when you have these words after it, you cannot be my disciple, that's a little concerning. What does he mean I can't be his disciple? If I don't do... Now, I would say this. Being a disciple, what is a disciple? A follower of Christ, one that follows his teaching. I would dare say that you could be saved and not be obedient to all of his teachings. But I don't know if you want to do that. Right? I don't know. Remember at the end of that, what did he say? Don't go to the rich people. Don't go to these people and let your reward be at the resurrection of the just. Right? So he's saying this would be my interpretation, but you know this already. I would tell you that would mean nothing in your life could mean more to you than him. Now, in theory, we know that. In practice, that's where we have an issue. Because, and I mentioned this before, if you've got, I was talking to Kyle and Kevin both, we figured there's probably 30 to 40 people called in Scott County that are called to preach. Well, where do they go? What do they do? Where can they be used? Well, we know some places in Idaho, right? Well, what does that take doing? Got to leave. And when you leave, what do you have to do? You have to say goodbye to who? Your mother, your father, your brother or sister. He knows what that connection means to us. He just wants to know if he's worth it. He knows what you would be giving up. But what he promises to do is on the resurrection of the just, make it up to you. I promise you, you won't give anything to God that he doesn't allow you to have what you want. There'll be a way. And he's just saying, I just got to know. Don't even bother. Unless you're willing to put me first. Now, he knows that, of course, we want to be around our family. He can make ways where we can't make ways. He can do things that we can't do. He can step in and make things possible. And one thing that we have today that you didn't have before, man, it took months to get to Europe. You can do it. And do you know, just for kicks every once in a while, I look at what sales are. There was a ticket the other day, $400 round trip from here to London. 7-hour flight. I mean, that's half an afternoon. Boom, you're in London. Well, do you know what they had to do before? Get on a ship for 4 months. Can you imagine that? Putting your family on a ship for 4 months. Then when you get there, there's no telephone. The missionaries in the past, they had no telephones, no FaceTime, no email. I can pick up the phone and talk to Africa while I'm driving down the road here at 70 miles an hour with a coffee in my hand, talk to somebody in a mud hut in Africa. Isn't that crazy? All right, we got to get out of here. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for this journey that we took this